What's up, Moth Sauce here. Today we're going to be going over one-point perspective. First off, I'm going to break this down into 4 basic ideas. First, we're going to start off with establishing the horizon line and establishing a vanishing point. I'm going to break this down to make it clear and in a 3-dimensional idea. Then after that, we're going to use the vanishing point to determine planar shapes, just making shapes look 3-dimensional on a 2-dimensional surface. That's all that means. Then after that, we'll determine the visibility of planes based off of the relationship of the object and the vanishing point in the horizon line. It's going to vary. Then I'll give you a few tips on how to simplify this idea so that way you don't have to do ley lines. You can get relatively accurate, fairly accurate actually, with your objects and the 3-dimensionality without having to do a ton of ley lines. Just by doing simple observation skills and understanding how perspective works. After that, I'll finish off with the demo. And so let's get started. The first step to this process is to think of the horizon line. Put it right across the screen right there. Think of it as exactly as the name entails. Describes the horizon. Think of that line as a horizon, and that separates the sky from the land. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break this down. I'm going to break this down into a low angle, high horizon. This is going to be the first one. It's going to be essentially showing a sliver of sky with a lot of land right below it. Then what we're going to do is move on to a mid angle, mid horizon. I'm going to put it right here. Think of this as a camera. That's showing half the sky, half the land. And the last one is going to be the opposite of low angle, high horizon. It's going to be high angle and low horizon. I'll put it over here on the right side. And it's going to show just a sliver of land with a lot of sky. And just really the best way to look at this is cameras that are looking over this horizon, describing it. And I'll correlate these horizon lines now across the screen. And they're just going to help you correlate what you want your focal point to be. The next step will be to place a vanishing point, and I'll place it on the correlating spots right here. And these are going to be the tool which everything that you'll place, every 3-dimensional object, will be vanishing towards. This is a great tool to help people navigate their eye towards the focal point too. I'll describe that a little bit more later. And then what we're going to do is think of these as bike spokes coming from each one of the lines, just shooting off in infinite directions. These are going to be essentially ley lines. These lines that are coming out from this vanishing point are going to help you coordinate your objects in this 3-dimensional world on this 2-dimensional surface, the paper. So what I'll do next is I'll draw some cubes. Cubes are kind of fundamental for every shape, everything that you want to draw, and to describe the surface and to help you correlate this idea a little bit clearer. All right, so let's move on to that. As mentioned before, the first process to this step is to establish your horizon line. Played it right in the middle, just for demonstration purposes, and I put the vanishing point to the right side over there. The next step, what we're going to do is we're just going to place some cubes at random locations. I decided to correlate them to the camera angles that I was talking about earlier. So we have one that's above the horizon, we have one that's dead in the center of the horizon line, we're going to have one below the horizon line. So you can see the planes that correlate to each one of these boxes. And it's going to vary based upon where they're located. And they just look like flat dimensional surfaces, but what we're going to do now is we're going to take those infinite spokes and spread them out. And we're going to reach the corners. Any corner that you see in a box gets a spoke. And it's going to go right straight to that vanishing point. What we'll do is we'll slice off the back end, making sure to be parallel with the box right there. The big important part is to be parallel with the box at this point, and it will make it look 3-dimensional. If you want, you can actually erase the lines going to the horizon line, and this will make your finished boxes. Essentially, you can vary the thicknesses, you make them thinner, whatever you want. So what we'll do is we'll move on to other shapes now. Cylinders will be the next shape on our list. Peter Paul Rubens, the old master, fairly famous artist. He is one of his famous quotes is that if you can draw a cylinder, a sphere, and a cube, you can draw anything. So it's very important to understand these shapes if you want to understand how to draw. A big key part of drawing cylinders in particular is understanding ellipses, which is going to be the top and bottom portion of your cylinders. And if you look around the top, middle, in the middle section, you'll see where it says ellipse. Don't draw your ellipses like a football, essentially. You don't want to have corners or sharp edges at all. What you want to do is have a nice, smooth, rounded surface. So if you look at that, other than that one aspect, cylinders are incredibly easy to draw in perspective. If it's below the horizon line, like the cylinder on the left, you're just going to see the top plane. You're going to see, if you have a cylinder that's on the horizon line, like the one in the middle, you're going to see that the top and bottom planes are going to be convex towards each other. And if it's above the horizon, like the one on the right, you're just going to see the bottom plane of that cylinder. If they're tipped over towards the horizon line, obviously they're going to go towards the horizon line using those imaginary spokes I talked about. Then what we'll go on to is that's pretty much it for cylinders. We'll move on now. Pyramids are next on our shape list. The only reason I really want to go over this is to explain how to find the center of any square or rectangle object. This is extremely important for pyramids in particular because you need to have the pointed end in the center of the object. So if you look at those two squares that I drew on the left side, you will see that I've drawn an X through one of them with a dot. That's going to be your secret. You just draw a square in perspective like I've drawn on the bottom, right below it, and between the two pyramids. You'll see that that square is flat on the surface, and I just drew an X through it and put the line. And with using that, you can find the center of the pyramid and make it as tall as or short as you want it to be, and connect it to the corners. Other than that, it follows the same exact rules as a cube. Spheres are by far the easiest of any of the objects. They look the same above and below the horizon line. You'll just see the bottom portion or the above portion. And if it's an oval shape, it'll just kind of follow the cylindrical ideal. Alright, so let's simplify this complex idea of perspective. First step is just understand that there's always going to be a front, side, and bottom plane. And it's just going to vary based off of what angle you're looking at. Sometimes it'll just be the front plane, sometimes side, bottom. Next is establishing the basic shape. Square, triangle, circle, cylinder, whatever. Not the actual three-dimensional shape, just the actual basic core shape. So square for here. The acute angle of the vanishing point. So if you were to go to the vanishing point, the spokes are essentially always going to be an acute angle. There's never going to be an obtuse angle from the origin that is the vanishing point. That's important to remember. And then parallel. I can't stress this. When you're slicing off your back edge, it has to be parallel with the basic shape. So alright, so let me do a demo for you guys. Alright, so I sped this process up. Normally I don't draw the actual vanishing line. I just imagine where it is, but for demonstration purposes I decided to draw it so that way you can see my point of reference. When you're drawing, don't take everything so literal. There's no such thing as a rule, just tools. So use everything that you learn as a tool and play around with it. I just started off with the basic idea that I wanted a girl as the focal point, and I wanted to be in like a city landscape. So I put this girl walking her little dog, took a little poop right there, and I put her face where the vanishing point is, so that way your eye is led to her head, which I want to be the focal point. To make things not boring, I don't want to just boring landscape with just one human in it. You have to add extra people, and this will also give a sense of perspective by placing them in perspective. Imagining a box around these people, you can place them in perspective. I thought it'd be a little fun too to maybe make this into retro, not really retro, but put some like mechs and stuff in there, like mechs that are cars instead of cars, So I drew this little mech here, driving around. Put like 3 fingers on it. That'd be kind of fun. And I started off with these little legs. I thought it'd be kind of fun to have him running, but I thought that it kind of looked goofy. And then I started off, then I was like, maybe I'll have him like turning around this corner. I didn't like that either. But in the end, I just had the treads. I decided to go with treads that went towards the vanishing line to give emphasis on looking at her face. And then I wanted to emphasize this idea that these are, it's a mech world, so I added another mech following behind it, so that way it's not so lonely, essentially. And the whole time I'm just thinking about that perspective line. You can see vaguely through everything. I'm just separating, adding more people to make it feel a little bit more alive. Slightly skew this door a bit, have somebody coming out, it's not so boring. Add some more lines emphasizing that perspective, so it's a three-dimensional world and it's not flat. And adding just some character, some life, a little shop there in the corner. Put some bricks. And here I'm just adding tone, just to separate objects so it looks more three-dimensional, and just separating things from the foreground and the background. All right, so that's it. That covers pretty much everything for 1 point perspective. I hope you all learned something. Please like and subscribe if you like this video, and I'll see you next time.